Yo, what's up, everybody? Uh, Driving again, and this joint I'm recording is actually a re-record because I recorded one angle was crazy, and I went back to listen to it. And I really wanted to have that conversation and talk about it out loud. So I'm actually just going to re-record it, and I don't know. In the time in between those two recordings, a lot happened, and I think my perspective on a lot of that conversation has grown. So essentially, I was telling y'all in that video that I got picked up on that for the internship that you probably heard about already with Casey. I was talking about how amazing of an opportunity it was for me, the learning experience, it is a crazy learning curve. And I brought back up how I came into the field of public health, through the circumstances and the lessons learned, my observation of a system that was set up in such a way that it prevented people from any marginalized background really to receive the best care that they possibly could have received as such, right? I also talked about it from my drill sergeant's perspective or my TI of like you could complain or you could shut up and make rank. And, I took that personally and I decided to just kind of make rank. And I hope I told y'all in the episode I came back about how that make rank part I started to challenge after going out to Brooklyn and attending a service for a friend's mother who made rank in a completely different way, but really made an impact. And I talked about how Casey really offered me the opportunity to see application of research, application of evaluation, application of bridging some of those disparities in real life outside of the academic space, which was dope. But I also started telling y'all about how I was balancing all of it, right? And that's the conversation I really wanted to revisit, because the conversation I had there was perspective versus creation, or perspective meets creation. And then from there, a conversation about, burnout and things of the sorts, right? So essentially what I was saying, and this is my viewpoint on things, and I want to caveat it all with I'm never going to tell you that my viewpoint is absolute, or that my viewpoint or my behaviors, my pathway is going to work best for you. I do believe in every conversation there is something you could always take away from it and apply as applicable to your life and the parts that fits where you need them to fit at. But when I talk about this perspective, it really is how you respond to things that's happening to you in the world, right? Just because something happens that's crazy or that's, not where you wanted to be at, doesn't mean it has to ruin your day. But often, right, we allow that to happen. Often we look for something in this weird element of like subconscious searching that once we get it reaffirmed to us, then it's like, all right, cool, I knew it was going to be bad. I knew this was going to happen. I so forth and so on, whatever, right? And I spoke about it in the conversation of listening to like the number, or not listening to, dang, I'm driving and trying to negotiate traffic. But I talk about it in the concept of one of my favorite movies, which is The Number 23. It's starred by Jim Carrey, right? And if you haven't seen the movie, I'll give you a quick synopsis of it. He was this animal hunter, not too relevant, but relevant. Got bit by a dog, got put on psychiatric leave because of the dog bite. I don't know if that's really the protocol for animal hunters, or animal control specialists. And so at the same day, he ended up going to this event with his wife, and then he was waiting to meet up with her, and he was outside a bookstore, went in, found his book, started picking it up, thumbing through it, and as he's reading through the book, he becomes increasingly more obsessed with the number 23. That's just like kind of deterministic factor that's ever present in every facet of our lives. And he becomes obsessed with the number 23. So much so he started to find it everywhere. And that's the conversation I wanted to have about perspective. When you look for something, you will find exactly what you're looking for. Every time. And we all been around people, we all have engaged with people like that at some point in time, who even through like personal relationships, hanging out with people, or in romantic relationships, like, hey, I knew you were going to do X or do Y. And the reality is that what you perceived is what you created, right? If you in a romantic relationship and you think your partner is doing something foul, and you start looking through their phone, you start looking through their text, you start looking through social media, you start looking into their work life or whatever it is, you're going to find something that confirms your belief because you're going to create it, regardless of how actual or perceived it is. And this is what I mean by that, is that when you read a text message from the lens of it being a flirt or advancement to the other person or something of the sorts, that's exactly what it is. And who's going to challenge that? Because that's your reality. You created that. You allowed that to exist. You had no neutrality. You didn't give it an opportunity to be one thing or the other thing. And that's the problem, right? And when you apply that in the other facets of life, outside of your romantic relationships or whatever it is, you apply that into, hey, I'm going to have a bad day today. And then something innocuous happens. Again, something that didn't mean anything to anybody, but you allowed it to be that bad thing that you thought was going to happen today. So now you allow for that to ruin your life. Or ruin your day, I mean. Not as much as ruin your life. And these perspectives come up in different ways, and I'll share my story of how I saw my perception change and this added benefit, right? When I was starting this in the beginning of my educational experience, I had the opportunity to go out to American Academy of Health Behavior Conference. It was in San Francisco, right? So I took that opportunity, which was also my spring break, to go catch up with people, right? So I flew into LA, met up with little cuz, chilled with the homie, and then I drove up to the Bay. And at the time, right, Mama was like, why don't you just stay with me, honey? And I hope y'all heard about Mama. I hope I published that at some point in time. But Mama was a lifesaver. Like, this lady really took me in at times. Like, that's why she's Mama. Like, not just me, my whole family, like everybody, right? She still sending me her clothes and gifts. She's Mama, right? And she's like, why don't you stay with me? But her house was an hour away from the conference, at least an hour away, and it was raining the whole time. And I did book the conference hotel, which was crazy. Like, the fee was crazy. It was like $3 something a night. Parking was like $75 a night or $95 a night, one of the two. So I was like, oh, but I can stay at the conference. I can do this. And if I don't, then I gotta drive to the Bay. I gotta drive to Mama house. I gotta drive back and forth to the conference every day. I gotta sit in traffic, so forth and so on. And then, strangely enough, through other influences, I decided to change that perspective. Now I realized, like, I don't have to do any of these things. I get to do these things. I get the privilege to do these things, to be on the West Coast. I know a lot of people who never saw the West Coast, and it's not even just like on something like they never, really traveled at all, or they don't have the resources. These are people with resources, with, time to travel, with travel experience that still never made it west. So I get to be out here and have people to catch up to in LA, have people to catch up to in San Francisco. These are big cities. Like, I should be celebrating that. Even more so, I get to spend time with a lady who was so influential in my life, her and her husband. And she's getting older, and I don't know how much time I would be able to spend with her, especially because, quote unquote, I have such a busy life. So instead of looking at it and I got to do this, I got to do that, I get to be out here at a conference that is gate kept. I get to be around somebody who loves me. Mama cooked me food, y'all. She made me home cooked meals, and she from the South, so those meals slapped. They slapped. So I got to have all those experiences as opposed to, being able to say, I just got to I got to do this, I got to do that. No, I get to. I'm honored to do that. When I changed the perspective, the drive wasn't as crazy anymore. The drive to and from San Fran, light work. In fact, I left the conference early to go hang out with Mama. I was like, yo, Mama, we go grab, she had this burger spot that opened up, and she wanted to take me there, and we went over there. Mama even had a sip of my beer, and it's like, Mama don't really drink like that. So it was just a good opportunity to really sit down and experience life. But if my perspective was, if it was still in I got to do this, I got to do that, I would have missed that blessing. I would have completely missed that opportunity for happiness in life, for joy in life, because I was so focused on the negative that I didn't get to understand the positive, right? So once you realize how important your perspective is, then you can start to think about what it looks like to change that, right? And this is where I say perspective meets creation. Because as much as you say, hey, I don't want to focus on the negative, I don't want to focus on the negative, you also have to create opportunities towards your benefit, towards your happiness, towards your joy. Like I tell people all the time, and maybe because I'm driving all the time, you're never going to be driving down the highway and see a billboard to say, yeah, happiness is here, right? You have time to exit now, get off here, enjoy life. They try to sell you that. They sell you those on billboards, and you may notice it, or you may not. And you may be like, no, I ain't got time for all that right now. I'm in the middle of this. I'm busting this trap, or whatever the situation is. So you're not going to see it. So you have to intentionally determine when you're going to carve out time to decompress. What decompression look like for you? What joy look like for you? And I say all that because I talk about it in the sense of burnout, right? And when I teach personal health, I have a segment on burnout where I actually don't really do too much lecturing. I have other videos and supplemental material, but burnout in this hyper-productive, hyper-professional, hyper-perfectionist society we live in forces us to continue to produce products, right? And produce products at the highest possible level. And we all been around it. You know, some people are calling it hustle culture, no days off, so forth and so on. And it's unrealistic and it's unsustainable towards a happier life, right? And you see it, especially in this concept of social media addiction, is that we're so reliant, we're so desperate, more so. We're desperate for some form of dopamine, some form of reward, right? And I see it on social media all the time where people are saying, oh, I grind this hard for money, like money is the reward, money is the reward. And for a while, that can be a reward. I'm not going to say it's not. But what I'll say from my personal experience, and this applies to me, is that after a certain period of time of having enough money or not enough money, or any combination of that, is that at a certain point in time, money stops being as much of a reward. Especially in today's society. Listen, 10,000 could disappear quick. We all know that. So you're like, dang, I need to make 10,000. You won't be happy when you make that 10,000, but in a week, that 10K could be gone. Just done. And then what? You're not happy anymore? Or you now you got to try to figure out how to make another 10,000. It keeps you in a rat race in that sense. And you're just constantly trying to perform and perform and perform to get that reward. And don't get me wrong, that's what all of it is. However, we don't always have to reward ourselves with something that is a byproduct of more work. Rewards can take so many different other perspectives, such as spending more time with your family, doing something like going to a hotel. I like to go to hotels, right, and take me a little hot little bath with the Epsom salts and all that. You know, I like to sit by water sometimes. That's free. I mean, it costs you gas to get there, but just sit by the water, relax, right? Take that second to breathe. I enjoy doing that. That's a reward for me. So when you're grinding, like I am right now, right? I got this internship I'm grinding for. I got my independent research I'm grinding for. I'm getting ready for my comprehensive exams. We already figured all that out, working on MOU, doing a comprehensive literature review on adverse child experiences, especially like in their longitudinal relationship or measurements. Then I'm writing a manuscript, testing some of my own theories with the data set. So I'm doing all that. I'm working on all that so that I could do all that in that 90-day time frame we have allotted for me. And then I picked up another position doing some research with another team out of Purdue. So, I'm on go. Then I still got family environments, like all types of family engagements that I'm scrambling for. I'm trying to make a play towards. And I got to be intentional. I got to be very intentional on when I allow my rewards to take place. Because one of the biggest impediments towards progression, from my opinion, is that deprivation of dopamine, right? When we're deprived of those places, those spaces and those rewards for dopamine, it's harder to want to keep working at such a high caliber, right? You got to remember, like, everything in life works off of that, right? So psychology call that kind of like that operant conditioning type of conversation, whereas though like you do something for a period of time and you get some type of reward, have it be like every one event you do, you get this one reward, or you give this passage of time of work and then you get something like a paycheck as a reward for it. We recognize people in this concept of meritocracy of, hey, if you work hard enough, you get this award at this company, or you receive this fellowship in this prestigious institute, whatever it is. We all grind towards some reward, and when you're not getting those rewards, you start to fall back. That's also true in our romantic relationships. When you stop rewarding each other, you stop seeing the reward in the relationships start to fizzle out. So if that's true in all these other domains, why are we not applying that true to ourselves? Even if it's not 100% true, maybe it is a little bit more that we should be doing for ourselves. And is taking a break, taking this time to be rewarded. But the thing is, right, you have to create it, because the world doesn't care. Your family don't care what you got going on. I mean, they might, but not to the same way you do. And it's partly because we're all dealing with our own issues. We're all kind of feeling that conversation of burnout. We're feeling that conversation to be upwardly or obnoxiously successful. We're feeling that conversation to continue to be perfect. So we all have our own burden. So while I may consider yours, or your family may consider yours, it's only being considered through the lens of what I also have to do. Your job definitely don't care. Your job got metrics they need to meet. They got returns on investments they must go ahead and satisfy. So they're going to give you another project. They're going to give you another project. Your family's going to ask you for another help, another favor, another whatever. So you have to be the advocate for yourself to say, yo, today I'm not doing anything. I'm going to do not disturb. Don't hit my line. Today I'm going to take that time to reward myself in whatever which way that looks. It can even be in a simple sense of, hey, I am going to demand from my social environment what I need from it. Like, hey, I want to go drink with the squad, with the fam, but I don't want y'all asking me for anything. I want to be with y'all because y'all are my happy place. This is my reward, but I'm not doing things for y'all today. Today isn't about you. It's about me. It's 100% about me. It sounds bad, right? And there's a content creator, I'm gonna call him out, Professor Odie, right? Sometimes I don't agree with everything he's saying, but a lot of times I do. He's a very, very informed brother, and he's very articulate, but he tells it in the sense of, you need to be selfish. And one of your biggest problems in life is you're not being selfish enough. And that I do agree with 100%. 100%. He's right. A lot of times we need to be more selfish with our time, with our effort, with our energy, with our emotional reserves. And we delve those things out in ways that we don't even realize that we're sacrificing it. And it's not to say that, and he'll articulate it better than I can, so definitely go drop him a follow if you really want to hear more about it. But it's not to say that being selfish is inherently wrong. In fact, sometimes you need to be selfish to continue to do for other people. I personally use this example of a food pantry more so. Before I heard of Professor Odie's perspective, I used to discuss it that if you operated a food pantry and people came in, right, let's say they was cooking rice and they needed rice that night, you had the rice on the shelves. If those people don't leave something behind that they don't need, like the beans, like some greens, like canned greens, some potatoes, whatever, and people just come taking off the shelves, you're going to come to this point where eventually you can't feed anyone else because there's nothing left on the shelves. And at a certain point in time, you have to close the pantry to be able to restock, to be able to get your resources back in order to feed yourself first, and then to continue to feed your community, your society around you. So sometimes you do have to selfishly say, hey, I'm closing up shop to regain these resources. And then demand those resources from people, not necessarily in the sense of saying, hey, I demand you return back to me peas or you return back to me rice. Because if they had the capacity to return from you what they took, then they didn't need it in the first place. And that's a different conversation to be had. But to get from people what they can give, what they can afford to lose, what they can afford to sacrifice, sometimes you have to be a little bit more explicit in how you receive that, how you get that from people. Sometimes it's not malicious. Sometimes people don't know that they're withholding from you things that they could give you. They just don't understand that you need it yet. And sometimes it's hard for them to see it past all of the burdens that they're also facing, all the hardships that they're also undergoing. And that's why I do believe that it's imperative that you are intentional in creating opportunities for your joy, for your reward. Because if you don't get that reward, it's going to be increasingly more difficult to sustain this work ethic that you're putting up. You can't just grind 24/7, no days off. Maybe you could. Who am I to say you can't? But what I will say about that, and this is the closest to absolute I'll say, that is just absolutely not a life worth living. To work and work and work with no joy. They got an adage about that. All work and no play make Jack a dull boy. You gotta have that play. You gotta have that reward. So the way I started doing it, right, for me is in a conversation of goal setting. So again, in my personal health course, because you don't think about all of these things as impacting health, it all very much impacts our health, our physical health, our mental health, our spiritual health, all of that. I talk about it in the conversation of SMART goals, right? And we all seen that when you talk about New Year resolutions. Oh, I'm gonna do this year. Like I'm starting the day and I'm just gonna change my entire life. It's unrealistic, right? And because it's unrealistic, it's unsustainable. Because the moment you can't meet that metric, you back out. Boom, done. Maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow. So we talk about it in SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, or something realistic, time-oriented, right? I don't necessarily use the SMART acronym a lot. I do in the class, but in personal lives, it's just like, and in my personal practice, it's about creating goals that are indeed digestible and accomplishable. Again, you want to celebrate those victories, no matter how small those victories are. You should be able to celebrate that. I started working out again, and then I also decided, I'm gonna start trying to create this opportunity for quote unquote self-care or those rewards. But I also know that in a grandiose scheme, that's not going to work. Some days I don't work out, even though I wanted to. Some days I get in the basement because I'm working out in the basement, and I'm like, I ain't feeling it today. And I allow myself to do that. But this is what I mean, is that instead of saying I'm going to work out for 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, it's going to say I want to do something at least. Give me 10 minutes, 15 minutes. That's more than I did yesterday. That's more than I did this time last year. So as long as I'm doing something, I'm going to reward myself on that. I'm not going to settle for it. I'm not going to become complacent in okay, I did a little bit towards it, but I'm also going to use that little bit to fuel my lot of it. And what I mean by that is that if I wanted to start running right now, and I ain't running forever, I'm not about to sit here and say I'm going to run a marathon today. That's not how people train. Today I'm going to run a mile. Not even that right now. Today I just want to be able to get out and run a lap. Because if I think I'm going to go run a mile, I'm definitely not fitting to run a mile. And I'm not even about to get up and go try to run a mile because that's too long and I'm not going to make it. So instead, I want to run, let's say, 1 lap. I want to walk the block real quick. Let me just start by going outside and walking real quick. Somewhere for funsies. Not because I got somewhere to go, not because I need to walk into this place real quick, but like, let me just go out and take a walk. Maybe take a walk a little longer next time. Maybe I try to walk a little faster next time. All right, now that I got my walking down, maybe I try to get a little jogging on this block. I'm just going to jog this block. And then I progressively increase my endurance, my commitment to the process in ways that it just didn't sound daunting. It didn't seem like it was going to be too hard to do or unrealistic to fit in this busy schedule because you're going to prioritize the easy win over the harder one. Because you want that reward, you want that dopamine back. So I say all that to leave y'all with my last little bit of messages, as I always do. And the last thing I want to tell you is that, right, there was a challenge I saw once on the internet. A dude on a podcast that I don't remember said it like, spend the next week not saying anything negative to yourself. and watching what you say negative to yourself. I thought that was incredible. I tried it. I didn't make it like 3 days, right? But I'm still trying it. But I want to give y'all a similar challenge. Maybe you do it, maybe you don't do it. But spend the next week thinking about how you're responding to things, and how your perception is allowing you to feel about certain environments or certain events, and then start to create alternatives towards that. Create an opportunity one day a week, just one thing in a week to say, hey, this is going to be what I want my reward to be. This is what my joy is going to be. That's internal to you. That's not contingent upon somebody else delivering you this reward, a reward that you will create for yourself, that you will enjoy for yourself. Some time carved out, even if it's just 15 minutes to sit quietly, even if it's just going in your car and putting on your favorite song and singing to the top of your lungs. Create a space for you to do that for. And take inventory of how you are responding to those perceptions, how you are creating that internal environment, and how you are creating that space for joy, how you are balancing it all out. So, because it's a re-recording, y'all get to hear it. And I keep saying this, right? Like, follow, share, definitely share, reach out. Let me know in the comments if you agree, disagree with whatever I said. Again, I don't believe I'm the ultimate authority on anything. I'm always down to learn, and I'm always down to grow. I'm always down to hearing different opinions and different perspectives. I don't take much of this personally, right? Unless you're attacking me personally, we cool. So I appreciate y'all all, whoever is listening out there, whoever is sharing out there, who's ever helping this grow, for coming and being a part of this space. I'm hoping to talk to some other people again, really about that shared experience soon. A little less professionally, a lot more personally, because all these things are interconnected. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, about the interconnectedness of life and how change behaviors must exist everywhere. But that's another episode, so if you like that kind of conversation, stay tuned. So I can't wait to keep bringing y'all more content, because I'm finally getting a little bit better at it, at keeping track of things, at being on things, because it's a work in progress. And that's really what this is supposed to show you all, is that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to persevere and be kind to yourself. Be kind and be graceful for yourself when you don't get it right, when you miss a goal, when you fall short. So till the next time we speak, y'all, if you haven't heard it this week, I love you all very much. Talk to you soon.